Former two-division UFC champion Daniel Cormier praised Joe Rogan for asking the tough questions at UFC 279. What question did Joe Rogan ask? Who was his question directed to? And what was the outcome of the whole scenario? In this video, we'll cover these topics in detail. Make sure that you stick with me to the end so you don't miss out on any part of this. Without any further delay, let's get into it. Joe Rogan praised for pushing UFC 279 fighter to answer tough questions. Here's how it happened. Highest-ranked welterweight Khamzat Chimaev faced old foe Kevin Holland last Saturday. Chimaev was originally scheduled to fight Nate Diaz at the main event of UFC 279. He was pitted against Holland on the one-day notice after he reached 7.5 kilos over the agreed weight limit. Chimaev started fast and raced through Holland in the new co-main event, securing a first-round submission. It marked the fourth UFC fight for Chimaev where he didn't absorb a single significant blow. After the event, fighter-turned-commentator Cormier shared his thoughts on Chimaev's sensational victory. He praised commentator Joe Rogan for pressuring Boers to talk about his losing weight. Quote, "Khamzat Chimaev is a future champion," said Cormier. "I want to know a little more about the weight cut issue. In the octagon, he said the doctors had stopped him from cutting weight the night before. He was closer to 7.5 pounds. Daniel Cormier highlighted that he loved how Joe Rogan asked the tough questions, which he had tried to avoid with the "I don't want to talk about this stuff" excuse, but Joe pressured and told him that he has to talk about it because people think that he's a future champion. Joe further asked him how he can possibly become the champion if he can't make the weight. Daniel Cormier concluded by saying that he loved that Joe put his foot in the fire a little bit. During Friday morning's official weigh-in, Chimaev didn't seem to mind reaching 178.5 pounds as he showed his middle fingers to the cameras. Community members expressed strong disapproval of Chimaev's reaction on the scales and demanded an explanation for his actions. Daniel Cormier believed that Rogan was able to extract more details from Chimaev while remaining firm on the subject, and then he gave them some answers. He said something like, "I knew I was going to fight this guy. They told me to eat some vitamins and drink some water because I wasn't healthy." So Daniel Cormier thinks that he kind of gave more detailed answer than he would have given because Joe had pushed a little deep. Daniel Cormier said he's glad that Rogan dug deeper to find out more, but Chimaev was not bothered by the hate. Chimaev entered Fight Week as a fan favorite but turned heel to become one of the sport's main antagonists. It was obvious he didn't mind the hate he received at the event and instead found a level of satisfaction from the coverage of his antics. He said that the post-fight press conference that they should watch the weigh-ins on Instagram and see who has the most views. He further asked him to look out how many views he had and compared to what Diaz has, and they will see who's more of a star. He added that people can say they don't want to see him fight, but they are liars. He boasted that everyone wants to watch this fight and everyone wants to see a killer, not that smoker and drug dealer stuff there. He concluded by saying that he's a professional athlete. In other news, let's talk about Deontay Wilder and how to rebuild a defeated artist. Deontay Wilder returns to the ring this Saturday against heavyweight contender Robert Helenius at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. It's a fight that the Bronze Bomber has every chance of winning. Helenius is a good boxer, but he usually gets knocked out at the highest level. Wilder is a former WBC heavyweight champion who just put Tyson Fury through his paces. It's fair to say that this fight should be a good way for Wilder to return to the limelight, but the way back isn't always easy for a fighter like him. Wilder is a complete knockout artist who has won his championship and defended it 10 times with a series of daunting performances. The fear factor wasn't the only contributing to his quick wins over opponents like Bermane Stiverne, Luis Ortiz, and Chris Arreola, but it surely played a part. But we know Wilder is human. Fury stopped him twice, with the second of their 3 fights being particularly one-sided. The third fight was more competitive, but also much more brutal, with Wilder in particular taking countless punishments. It's the kind of fight that leaves scars beneath the surface. Fighters like Helenius aren't usually the ones to expose them, but invariably they always end up being exposed. Mike Tyson found out to his detriment the most feared heavyweight in history managed to preserve his aura when James Buster Douglas splattered him onto the canvas in Tokyo. But after Evander Holyfield exposed his weaknesses in 96 and his psyche in 97, he was never the same man again. Lennox Lewis, Danny Williams, and Kevin McBride represented the steadily declining heavyweight roster that was able to overtake Iron Mike at a once glorious career as it came to a halt. Sonny Liston was Mike's predecessor in many ways, a devastating puncher from whom the Kid Dynamite was inspired. To his credit, he went on to win after Muhammad Ali skinned him twice titles, but those victories were a lower level than he was used to, and knockout losses of 1969 to the unspectacular Leotis Martin marked the beginning of the end. But it's not all bad news for Wilder. Some of the best boxers in history have been able to pick up the pieces after bitter defeats. George Foreman is a prime example of not only rejuvenating knockout kings, but also sports comebacks in general. The Big George was knocked down by Muhammad Ali in the scorching heat of Zaire in 1974. He was knocked down by Ron Lyle before rising to win his next fight. He was checked by Jimmy Young in 1977. The aura eventually evaporated, and so did George. But Foreman returned to the sport a decade later, bald, plump, and his usual sneer replaced by a warm smile. Most expected him to be chewed up and spat out by the battering of the banner division. Instead, he dismissed his skeptics, then he fed them a lean, nasty, low-fat dish fresh from his patented grill. Foreman climaxes by defeating Michael Moore to win the World Heavyweight Championship 20 years after losing it to Ali in the Rumble. Foreman was a monster, and no boxer has achieved the feat since. But Wilder can look to a more recent heavyweight king for a little inspiration. Vladimir Klitschko was a genetically blessed puncher when he met journeyman Ross Purity in 1998. An 11th round knockout loss later and his aura was lost, but Dr. Steelhammer seemed to have turned the page, which he confirmed was a series of 5 years of invincibility and a victory for the WBO world title. But in 2003, Corey Sanders carried out the surprise of the year by putting a KO on the Ukrainian in 2 rounds. Klitschko made 2 tune-ups and strides and hired legendary trainer Emmanuel Stewart to fill in the gaps in his game. The effect was not immediate, but Klitschko lost another WBO challenge to Layman Brewster by knockout the following year, but from then on, Stewart's lessons started to sink in. Klitschko went from being an aggressive but reckless boxer to a clinical distance boxer, using his immense reach to backhand opponents with his jab and keep his worrying chain out of trouble. He didn't lose for 11 years between losing to Brewster and his 2015 loss by unanimous decision to Tyson Fury. This series saw Klitschko enjoy the second longest reign as heavyweight champ in history, during which he defended the title 18 times. Only time will tell which Wilder we will have when he returns. Will his opponent realize the Emperor has no clothes like they did with Tyson, or will some tweaks in his game allow the Bronze Bomber to surpass his previous exploits? The Hellenius fight probably won't give us the answer, but Wilder will ultimately have to answer those questions. Wrapping it up, Conor Benn will have the right to clear his name. Eddie Hearn claims Conor Benn will have the right to clear his name compared to fighter's current situation in an incident in 2019 which saw Dylan White cleared of doping charges. The 26-year-old was due to face longtime rival Chris Eubank Jr. in the ring at the O2 Arena last Saturday, but the fight was postponed after Ben tested positive for clophene, a fertility drug that increases blood pressure and testosterone levels in men. In a test conducted by the Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency, the fight was withdrawn by the British Boxing Board of Control despite Ben's testing with the UK Anti-Doping Agency, which was found to be negative. Ben is now fighting to prove his innocence, but he faces a long suspension of 2 years if he fails. But that concludes the video for today, my friends. If you found the video helpful, please do consider giving us a thumbs up, and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. Thanks so much for watching, my friends. I'll see you next time.